Well, here we are, another episode, ShiftED podcast. We're coming from a beautiful, sunny, as you can see. You won't see because this is audio only, but it's sunny, trust me. And it's a beautiful day. And today I have Emily Cherkin coming in from the down south. Emily, where are you coming in from?
I'm in Seattle, Washington, so opposite coast, but not too far from your border.
Right on. So our neighbor to the south, and Emily's the author of an amazing book called Screen Time Solutions, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech-intentional family. And there's just such great stuff in this book. I encourage you guys to get a copy, read it. And we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're going to talk about the crux of all of this screen time that I know all of the listeners out there, you're dealing with it. If you didn't want to admit it or not, we're dealing with it. But how can we better deal with it? Because it sometimes feels like it's slipping away from us a bit. So, Emily, thanks again for joining today. I really love your book. I think it's just so well written, and your insights are just... You talk about a lot of aha moments. Well, this book created a lot of aha moments for me. So I thank you for that and putting that out into the world. But I'd like to start always with these as, what were some turning points or tipping points that got you to where you are today in this journey of yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can tell you very clearly. So I was a classroom teacher for 12 years. I taught 7th grade English, working on literature and writing and all that stuff. And about 5 or 6 years into my teaching career, as a teacher, I was increasingly being asked to enter grades in an online portal. Parents had access to these grades 24/7. And I noticed two things happen almost simultaneously. One, my students stopped coming to talk to me about grades or missing a homework or what do I need to do to make this assignment up. And their parents started emailing me all the time, refreshing that grading portal. Right. And both of those had a direct impact on the time I was spending with my students, because now I was spending time behind my computer entering the grades and responding to parent emails. And I was deeply concerned about the way it was changing my students' skill building that I saw as so critically important in that middle school age, that executive function, asking for help, planning your, projects and homework and all that. So that was a really big aha moment for me. And that was as a teacher, right? I was being asked to. About the same time, my students were increasingly accessing social media platforms on their home computers, right? This is pre-personal devices. And in fact, when I first started teaching in 2003, none of my students had devices, personal devices. By the time I left in 2015, it was like 95% had them. So in just over a decade, it was a huge shift for that part of it. So when I talk about screens, there really are sort of two existing there's many problems, but the two is the personal device one, and then there's the sort of ed tech one. And actually, they happened to me at about the same time. So when my students were going online at home, and at the time, of course, it was Facebook, which no tween would be caught dead on Facebook now. They would come into school the next day talking about, oh, well, somebody didn't tag me in this post and I didn't get invited to this party and I'm feeling really bad. And I was like, wait a minute, this is having a huge impact on their social skills. We cannot not talk about this. So that really led me to conversations with my students, who then quickly pointed out, well, yeah, but my parents are texting and driving. My parents are playing Candy Crush. My parents are on Facebook. And I was like, ding, this is not a kid problem. It's an adult problem that's impacting children. So those are sort of my aha moments.
That's a huge realization, though, coming to that kids don't just start doing this stuff. They have to get it from somewhere. It's not just osmosis or like magical things, spells or something that happens to them. They see it and then they internalize it.
Right.
You said something really interesting too that I want to kind of drill down on a little bit. Is, do you think that that screens, the accessibility that kids have to it now, that it's become so easy, do you think that we kind of miss the boat on not the phones, but what happens in the phone, like more around social media? Like, I find that schools and parents, but I kind of see it from a teacher perspective as well, that we kind of miss that social media education or
Yeah.
digital citizenship or because it always
Hmm.
seemed like it's everybody's responsibility and no one's responsibility. And it sometimes got overlooked as we just didn't see what it was going to do to these kids. I mean, I
Hmm.
guess in hindsight, right? We have data and information now,
Yes.
but will it inform our practice?
Ugh.
And how do you think we can get back on track with social media? Because that seems to me the biggest attraction for kids.
That's such a good observation because I think you're totally right. It's a constant game of catch up because,
Right.
and I think that is because it has changed so rapidly in such a short period of time. Like I often say that this is a maybe 10-year-old problem, but really it's a 5-year-old problem. And like, if you don't have kids that were school age in the last 5 to 10 years, it's not at all the same. And I'll even joke to parents like, I actually would love if my kid had access to 2011 Instagram. That would be fine. I mean, no, it wouldn't, but like I would be so much more okay with
Right.
that because it is so
Right.
fundamentally different today.
Mm,
So
mm,
I think that's a really, really good point. That is
mm.
like, did we miss the boat? And I'm an eternal optimist. So I think the answer is no, it's never too late. And I think what we're hearing a lot from like Gen Z now is you guys set us up with some pretty bad stuff and we're paying the price and we're mad about
Right.
it. So, I think that groundswell is going to help.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
and I also just point to the fact that adults are so terrible at our own use of managing social media screens, whatever, that we're starting to realize the impact it's having on our lives, right? So it's sort of, as
Right.
you point out, touches everyone, whether we want to admit it or not. Yeah.
Right. Right. And
Mhm.
do you think, like, looking at these patterns, I mean, if we look at generational use, I mean, obviously we're looking at technology towards now, but
Yeah.
parents have been parents for forever
Yes.
and had kids that were curious about things and wanted to discover and didn't want to listen there, like those relationships haven't changed all that
Right.
much, or
Yeah.
have they?
That's
Has
a great.
generations like is it the older the generation, the less likely that screens will be affecting or the technology, like will you have 70-year-olds like on screen for 12 hours a day, or like
That's a good question.
has
You know,
generations been affected by this in different ways?
yes is a short answer. And I think it's really interesting because if we think about grandparents for a moment, and
Right.
I hear two very different challenges with grandparenting in the digital age. One is
Mm.
grandparents who are horrified by how much time their grandchildren are on devices. And the
Yeah.
other is how many parents are concerned because their parents, the grandparents, are giving the tech to the grandkids because that's what they see everybody doing. So it
Yeah.
tends to sort of go into those extremes. Um,
Right. Right.
yeah, that's a really good question. I do think I'm Gen X pretty solidly, and
Hmm.
I think my millennial parent friends and colleagues do have a slightly different view than I do because I remember an analog childhood.
Right.
I mean, Gen X is kind of that last generation of really, running around the neighborhood and coming in when the lights came on and like,
That's it.
sort of free play that had really changed. And I know you had Lenore Skenazy on your podcast as well.
Hmm.
Talks a lot about that fear-based parenting that led a lot of sort of late Gen X millennial parenting into this like fear-based mindset that,
Right.
kept kids indoors more. So it's easy to blame screens as like the problem, but it's just one of many. And I think there are
That's it.
some parenting cultural shifts, such as fear-based parenting, that have really exacerbated the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I often talk, like I work with preschool teachers, and
Mm,
getting them to understand play and free play, particularly with our pre-service teachers or teachers that are just coming into the profession, they
yes.
struggle with that. And I'm so curious all the time. So my first question to them was always is, how did you play when you were young? Like when you were
Mm,
growing up, what was your play like? And a lot of them, it was very, again, screen oriented. And I'm talking about, newer teachers coming in around
yes.
in their early 20s, that we've lost connection with this play. And Lenore talks about it so nicely
Yes.
in
Yes.
her book and the podcast as well. Um, I, I know that there's the stranger danger is there. two parents working all the time. There's less green space. There's more of this unknown. In your opinion, what brought all this about? Like, is there
Yeah.
traces that we can trace to like
Yes.
where this can you
Yes.
elaborate on that a bit? Because I
Yes.
find
And
it fascinating the
I do
shift
too.
that's gone on so quickly.
Yes, I do too. And I write about this in the book, and Lenore's work has certainly influenced my thinking on this as well. One of the things that I think really changed for parents is our increased consumption of 24/7 media. And, now it's 24/7. Maybe 20 years ago it was just all day news, right? But even the 24-hour news channel thing was becoming, we were just it used to be you get the news once a day, might be even in a
Right.
paper, right? And there was no like interaction and comment section and all of this. It's just so different. And so, A, that's part of it. The other problem is, of course, the business model of tech relies on engagement and clicks and eyeballs. And so, in order to get us to engage more in these 24/7 news cycles, which are really boring if you don't have sensationalized stories, they had to
Right.
sensationalize the stories or
Mm.
only highlight the sensational stories.
Right.
As a
Right.
result, we as a parenting generation were like, oh my gosh, the world is so dangerous. Oh my gosh, kids are
Mm.
getting kidnapped left and right. But, and this is what I really talk about this in as a dichotomy between what is scary and what is dangerous. And Pew Research found in America that the top three parenting fears are number one is kidnapping, number two
Mhm.
is youth mental health, and number three is cyberbullying.
Mm.
And as Sesame Street used to say, one of these things is not like the other because it is shocking to see kidnapping as the number one fear. And here's
Yeah, that's
why
crazy.
it's because of our own fear based
Mm.
news, clickbait headlines, we think it's a
Mm.
problem. But the irony is, parents' response to that is, I need to give my kid a phone to keep them safe.
Right.
If my kid has a phone and they, God forbid, get kidnapped, I could call them, I could trace them, whatever.
Mm.
But if you give your child a phone, what do? You make number two and three, youth mental health and cyberbullying, way worse automatically.
Absolutely.
And so I
Yep.
understand the intention. And in fact, I
Yep.
think Lenore has this. Oh my goodness. Let's cut that part. Sorry, my computer.
No problem.
I think Lenore, in her book, she writes about the risk of kidnapping. And there's a statistic I love to talk
Right.
about, right? Which is if you wanted your child to be kidnapped, you'd have to put them on the street corner every day for 750,000 years to be guaranteed of being kidnapped, which is
And this
statistically
is number one fear.
number one. So a
Insane.
lot of the conversations I have with parents and in the work I do is to really help bring parents awareness to worry about the right thing, that your
Right.
kid's not going to get kidnapped, but your kid
Mm.
is going to experience harm in social media. It's not a
Yep.
matter of if, it's a question of when. And so helping them worry about or address the problem that they can actually do something about, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
and that's hard.
Right.
I mean, I have a lot of empathy for parents. It is scary. It feels scary,
Absolutely.
but it isn't dangerous.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's similar to like in preschool, teachers not wanting kids to do risky play. Yet that's how they build who they are as humans. Like if you're not going to let them take chances, you think they're going to take chances when they're older? Never.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love the reference you turned helicopter parents into snowplow parents. Like as time has changed. And
Yes.
I totally that was like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't come up with that, but it was an aha moment for me when I
Yeah.
heard that. Like this idea that now parents, we go ahead and mow away obstacles, to give
Yeah.
kids a clear path. And yet what they really need is a bumpy road. They need
That's
that
it.
opportunity to mess up in preschool in a safe environment, right? Where the teachers are there to help guide them. And when we take that away, it doesn't shock me at all that mental health is in a crisis, for youth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I guess I had a question about that is that do you think that what skills in particular do you find that are being left in the history dustbin that
Mm,
we just aren't
yeah.
we aren't achieving anymore and this generation will feel it once they hit
Yes.
of age.
Yes.
What are
Yes.
some of those really valuable skills that have to happen?
Yes. Absolutely. Great question. Frustration tolerance is a huge one. The
Yes.
ability to sit with something that's uncomfortable or
Mm.
scary or difficult. Um, I think, which the flip side of that would be perseverance, right? The ability to get through
Yep.
something and know you are capable, right? I think, again,
Hmm.
inadvertently parents overprotect in the real world and underprotect online, which is Jonathan Haidt's line. But so that's a big one. I think also, again, inadvertently parents are undermining children's confidence in their own skill set when they rescue, protect, save, prevent, hover, whatever word you want to use. And parents can make some different choices about letting their kids have these moments of struggle and see that as a gift. In fact, I often will say to parents, what gift are you giving your children when you provide them those experiences, or when you delay the screen, or when you say no? And I think this is all tied in, but parents are afraid to say no about the screen piece.
Hmm.
They're going to
Right.
be judged by their peers, or everyone else, quote unquote, has it, right? So
Yep.
I say to parents, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, and it is
Right.
time to step into that authoritative parenting, not authoritarian,
Hmm.
a big difference. But,
Yep.
we need to say no, and we need to tell our kids, I know it's hard and I believe in your ability to do it, because
Mm.
that's what our kids need to hear so that they can practice, perseverance and
Uh,
frustration tolerance and boredom.
for
Oh my
sure.
gosh, boredom is a
Oh God,
skill
yeah.
that we have to, it's a muscle we have to flex, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
so
Like,
important.
what am I going to do on my screen? I'm going to be bored. Oh, I'm not going to be able to follow up. Oh, all the other kids. Like, it's such a pressure from your kids too, and you always
Yeah.
like you want to please your kids.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
teachers, want to please their students. Like, I
Yes,
see the
totally.
parallel nature of it happening.
Yes. Yes.
That we want them to be,
Yes.
and I can help you with all your problems, and don't
Yeah.
worry, I'll be there for you if you
Yeah.
struggle. And instead of letting struggle happen and
Oh, yes.
developing resilience and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Which
and
brings,
actually,
yeah,
oh, I was just going to add that
yeah,
friction is
please.
so important here, right? And I have a post-it
Mm,
on my screen that says learning happens in moments of friction. And that can
mm,
be in the classroom or at home. We have to let our children hit those bumps in the road so they know. We can guide them, we can model, we can give examples, we can ask if they want help. But when we solve it for them, we take away the opportunity to learn something. And
mm,
that is where we see that longer term problem, the mental health,
right,
insecurity, lack of confidence coming out.
absolutely. Well, and I think our systems are designed that way to look for error
Yes,
and look at them negatively instead of learning opportunities. And you
exactly.
see that with parents and with teachers, right? This kind of taking away any kind of um, idea that mistakes are important, that they help me and inform me and make me grow.
Yeah. And I see that also in the form of platforms like surveillance technology, which
Mm,
catches, quote unquote, kids making mistakes and reports it to
right,
parents or schools and says, your kid typed this or your kid searched up that. And again, I mean, I'm sorry, but surveillance erodes trust. And trust is the
right,
foundation of a healthy society, right? Like of a healthy
absolutely.
family, of a healthy school. And so
Okay.
I see a lot of red flags with that. Again, the misguided preying on people, parent fear, that
Mm-hmm.
but not actually thinking about what's dangerous. What's dangerous is not
Right.
letting children build the skills so that they can thrive, so that they can trust others, right? That to me is really
Absolutely.
important.
Yep. And one of your quotes, which I really love, kind of, how can we turn this conversation around to see it in a positive light that we can empower ourselves? And I'm not sure if you said it, but you reference it, call it saying replace judgment with curiosity. And I
Yes,
found that line just fascinating in the sense that we don't have to judge about it because
yes,
we're all kind of doing it. We're in the same boat together.
exactly.
But how can we rejig the conversation
Yes,
around and how we talk to our kids or our students about screen time so that they're not feeling like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, but
right.
you're just, we need to get more informed about stuff. Could you
Yes,
could you elaborate on that quote? Because I
yeah,
just love it.
I do too. It's not mine. And I always
Okay.
open my talks with this story because I loved that too. And I joke that
Mm-hmm.
I first heard it when I took a mindfulness class with my husband when we were newly married. And I had
Mm-hmm.
time to take mindfulness classes because we didn't have kids yet. But I heard
Right.
that and I thought, oh my gosh, it's all about the reframe. I feel like when we're in judgment, we are defensive or other people feel defensive. But if you reframe it as curiosity, it disarms that stress and tension. And so one of the ways I see that playing out with parents and screen time, for example, is, you know, if, for example, you say to your child, you're always on your phone, I can't believe it, you're so rude, you know, the things that we all have said and say,
Right.
and instead
Yep.
say, I wonder why it's so hard for you to put your phone down. Or
Mm.
I forgot to teach you. This is one of my favorites. I forgot to teach you that when we go to restaurants, it's rude to look at your phone and you have to make eye contact with a waiter when you order. I forgot to teach you
Mm.
that. So again,
Right.
that shift in how we say it,
Just that's it.
just that little, again, if our goal as parents is to teach, which I believe it is, we are our children's
Hmm.
first teachers, then
Hmm.
that is part of the process is we
Right.
say, oh my gosh, I need to teach you this skill. Like it didn't
Mm.
occur to me that I hadn't, right? So
Right.
I just
Right.
think again, it allows us to just de-escalate the conflict and stress around a topic that is so fraught.
Absolutely. And another really cool tip that you had given out was living out loud or
Yes,
saying your use, like,
yes,
okay, I'm going to check my phone now. I've got to look at some emails. I have a really, important one coming in or whatever it might be,
right.
but you're verbalizing that usage. And I thought
Yes,
that that was just a great trick to,
yes,
get people aware of the
yes.
amount of use they might be having because not everybody looks at screen time use or
No,
wants
and
to.
this is such, yes. So living your life out loud. I actually heard it from a colleague in helping children with ADHD learn how to build executive function skills. And I thought,
Okay.
oh my gosh, this is brilliant for using it with technology because again,
Hmm.
it's that accountability piece and it's that increasing our own awareness of our use
Right.
and getting to teach our children about how we use tech or how tech uses us, right? So
Yeah.
how that is the starting point. And it is important to note that I tell parents to do this, not children. It starts with the adult, right? And the hope is
Right.
that your kids will then, well, they're going to roll their eyes, which they should, and they
Sure.
will. But that means
Teenagers.
they're listening. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something sunk in there and they're like thinking it's churning.
Exactly. Yeah, and eventually we
Amazing.
want to see them doing it too, and that's where again we can do that reframe. We can say, my son might hear his phone make a notification and he'll say, "Oh, I'm going to go reach for my phone and check what that was." And I'll say,
Mm,
"Thank you for living your life out loud." Right? So
mm,
I'm naming it because I
cool.
want that attention to that behavior to continue. Like I want him to say that again. So I get to
Yep.
name it and give it that positive reinforcement because
Right.
again, we're so quick to criticize, judge, blame, get mad, but where attention goes, energy flows, right? Like
Yes.
we want them to hear the
Nice.
positive things, what we want to see more of, not what we want less of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one last thing that we'll end on here again, there were so many aha moments when I was going through some of the other podcasts that you've been a part of in your book as well. Um, that a simple thing like turning your notifications off
Yeah.
can help reduce so much anxiety. What am I missing?
Yes.
Focus a little bit more. And it seems like such an easy thing to do, but would have really good um,
Yeah.
outcomes.
Yeah, net benefit right away. Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing I've had my notifications off for years. I never miss text messages because the reality is
Mm.
my phone's always nearby or it's on my
Sure.
computer. And thankfully there's things like, you can put do not disturb and that's a slight improvement, right? But
Yep.
yeah, again,
That,
if we're letting this device interfere, and actually I quote my husband here, he's like, letting someone who's not even in the room text you like while you're in the middle of talking to your child is giving permission to that person to interrupt you and they're not even physically
mm,
there
that's
and
it.
that's a
Yeah.
pretty shocking thing to think about it if
Yeah,
we're able to
it
sort of,
is.
how do they have that much power over us
And it's like the urgency. Like it's like I see it in workshops sometimes too. Like I'll know, like, oh, they just got a notification. They
Yeah,
start to get antsy and then they'll get up and walk out, to go
right.
and I'm like, we're
Yeah.
in the middle of something here. Like,
Right.
and
Well,
these are
and there's
like
that
educators.
frustration tolerance too, or the boredom, even like, knowing that you can trust yourself to survive 40 minutes without looking at your phone. Like, what would that be like? I wonder if that's even the opening question is what would it feel like right now if I asked you to turn your phones off and put them in the other room and you
Yeah.
have to like, how does that make you feel when you think about it, right? Because I'm guessing a lot of people are going to say, oh, I get all panicky or anxious,
Oh,
you know?
for sure. I think they would outright refuse. They no, my daughter's gonna contact me, or oh, the dentist is calling. I gotta
Yep. Yep.
like. I mean,
Yeah.
think 10 years ago, what did you do? You
That's it.
would
And
use
then
the
that's the
rotary phone and
reframe. Yeah, right. And the reframe of what gift might you be giving yourself to not be available 24/7, to have to
right.
delay gratification or response. Like, what is really the worst thing that could happen? I mean, yes, I know I'm going to get a list, but it's also really
Right.
good to model that, right? That our kids
Yeah,
don't need to respond right away, just like we don't need
that's
to.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I have to think about replace judgment with curiosity
Yeah.
when we're having. I was thinking too, like at the start of a workshop, like, can everybody just silence their phone or
Yeah.
put it in a box at the door? Because it does eat into time, and the distraction is continuously there.
Well, maybe start
And
with that story and ask
yeah,
it as a question. What would
mm,
it feel like? I'm curious.
yeah,
And
yeah,
do
interesting,
you think you can challenge yourself?
right?
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
into that.
Yeah, keep me posted.
Cool. Well, Emily, this has been fantastic. It's
Thank
such
you.
a great, amazing topic, and your words and insight is so valuable for the
Um,
listeners. So thank you for taking some time out. I appreciate your time, people.
my
Screen time
pleasure.
solution. Go get it. Read it.
Yes. Yes.
Ask your kids questions. Remember, replace judgment with curiosity and turn the future around a little bit
Yes.
because we need it.
We're going to do
So
it. We are. Thank
we'll
you
do
for
it. We'll
having
do it.
me.
Thanks,
My
Emily.
pleasure.